You know, there are just a ton of issues in construction contracts. We at Sawfeld Griggs handle many of them. I'd like to take a minute and talk to you about insurance provisions in construction contracts. I've got just a couple of tips for you on this. It is a very complex subject. The first tip is make sure that you know what the insurance is that you're getting. And the way you do that is you get a certificate of insurance. And I know many of you already do that, so this isn't anything that's new to you. But the problem that you need to think about with certificate of insurances is they aren't the policy itself. And oftentimes those certificates say that. So what you really ought to ask for in addition to the certificate of insurance is the policy of insurance itself. You'll probably get some pushback on that, but it's really important to have that policy because that really tells you what the coverage is that you bought and paid for in your contract. The second tip I have for you is hire an independent insurance broker who has great experience in the construction field. Those brokers know the policies better than any attorney or any contractor, and they will be invaluable to you in working through the insurance coverages that are necessary to protect your interest. So go out and find a good broker if you don't have one already. The broker will tell you so much more about insurance than I can, but I'm going to give you a couple additional tips on some policy coverages I think you ought to consider. First off, you always want to look at whether or not you have an additional insured or AI coverage. If you're asking the other person to provide insurance for you, you want that insurance to name you as an additional insured. Additionally, if you're on a project where a contractor is bringing hazardous waste onto the site, you should consider a contractor's pollution endorsement in that policy as well. If your policy has indemnity provisions, and many of them do, you want to consider contractual liability endorsement as well. That will help with some of the expenses if an indemnity claim is made. Additionally, you should consider having completed operations policies. And if you have a situation where the contractor is providing both design services and build services, you should consider whether or not you should also have a professional liability policy as well. Again, your broker can help you with that. Another thing to consider is the duration that those policies will be in effect. You really need to work with a contractor as to how long the contractor will maintain those policies. Obviously, just maintaining them during the term of the project isn't sufficient because you got to be worried about claims occurring after the completion of the policy. So from an owner's perspective, you want to have that policy duration last as long as possible, even out to the end of the statute of limitations. From the contractor's perspective, the contractor wants to squeeze that down so that the contractor doesn't have an ongoing contractual obligation to continue insurance year after year after year for a project that happened 6 years ago. That's a key point of negotiation between owner and contractors. You know, the final thing is a question that everybody has, and that is how much? How much is enough? What should my limits be? Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that. That's why I suggested you get a broker, because that just depends on the size of the project, how much work the contractor does, how much risk you are willing to take. So it's something that you really ought to discuss with your broker and your contractor as well. If you have more questions, please give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. I'm at Sawfeld Griggs, and we've been doing this for over 30 years. If you need more help on those, geez, really? Construction contracts have so many. Gee. All right, do it again. You know, there are just a ton of issues to